when you are learning from someone on the internet, I think it's really important to know who it is you're learning from, where they're coming from, and the background story. Plus, I am honestly obsessed with hearing people's entrepreneurial journeys and their stories. So I am excited today to tell you about how I went from a teacher, a burnt out teacher at that, to a multi six-figure business owner in just a few short years. And I want to start by telling you that I didn't always want to be a teacher. I know that so many people who are teachers come into their career saying, I always wanted to be a teacher. I would play school when I was growing up, and I loved my third grade teacher, and I knew this is what I always wanted to be doing. And that really wasn't the case for me. I was always a leader, and I loved teaching in different capacities. I was dance teacher for 10 years. I ran preschool programs. I ran summer camps. I was a counselor in recreation for 10 years. There were lots of moments in my life where I was in a teaching role, but I didn't go to university thinking I wanted to be a teacher. I didn't leave high school thinking that was going to be my career. In fact, I wanted to go into advertising, and I have air quotes around that because I didn't really know what that meant. I just knew that I loved flipping through magazines and looking at the cool product photos overlaid on top of graphics, and I really liked playing around in PowerPoint, and I was a sucker for a poster board project. I was a scrapbook girly. I loved making flyers to sell my camp spots. Like, whatever it is, I loved to do things on the computer, and part of me thought I was going to do something with advertising or marketing, but I also had no idea how I would even enter into that space. I didn't know what that meant. And my parents were real big on me doing science. So I did science throughout all of high school. I got my Bachelor of Science at University of Guelph. I thought I was going to be a vet. And I actually went full down that road. Like, I have my rabies vaccination. I was volunteering at vets. I was volunteering with large animals because you have to have this wide range of experience in order to get into vet school. And I did my MCAT, I did the course, I'd studied, I wrote the test, I did everything. I was on track to be a vet. I went to University of Guelph where OVC, the Ontario Veterinary College, is. I was in animal biology. I was doing all the things. I quickly realized I did not want to be a vet, and then I was super lost. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll do a master's. So I started taking more research classes. I started writing research papers within my classes, and I realized this is not for me either. I'm not a data girly. I get so bored. I could never reread an essay or a data report to save my life. My eyes just glaze over. I am not a details data person. So then I was really lost. I was in fourth year. I had no idea what I was doing with my life. And one of my roommates said she was applying to Teachers College. And I was like, Teachers College? That's interesting. So I started thinking maybe I should do that too, because I don't even want to open my master's applications. So what am I doing? Can't do anything with just a Bachelor of Science. So throughout the process of applying to Teachers College, doing all of the personal reflection questions, prepping for potential interviews, going through all of the statements of experience, all of that, that's when I realized that I wanted to be a teacher and that I actually had so much experience leading up to this point as a teacher. Like I said, I had been a dance teacher for years. I was currently teaching dance in university to other university students at our athletic facility. I was a counselor working with kids for all this time. I was teaching in so many capacities, but because I had been so hyper focused and being pushed into this science direction, it wasn't even on my radar. So throughout that process, I got really, really invested in teaching. I still felt like I couldn't let go of the science, and I didn't want to, quote, let my science degree go to waste. So I went the junior intermediate route so that I would have a science teachable. And throughout Teachers College, I, again, was just loving the graphic design elements. I became a little bit famous in the Teachers College. It was a small program because I had made a Dr. Seuss inspired teaching portfolio, and it was all, highly organized and graphic and pretty, and like, not graphic, like in a weird way. That came out so weird, but like graphic design, I mean. I spent a lot of time designing it with quote pages and tying everything back to Dr. Seuss and whatever. It kind of like spread like wildfire throughout the college that I had made it this way. I don't know if it was like in a good way or a bad way, because I am kind of a teacher's pet girly. Anyways, all this to say, that was the part I really enjoyed. It was like the setting up of the lesson plans, the making the worksheets, these sorts of things that I really, really loved. And then I did a kindergarten placement, and I loved kindergarten. I loved everything about it. I loved the program in Ontario so deeply. I loved my teaching partner that I first met, and I started an Instagram to start sharing my ideas. I also taught fitness at this time, and one of the women I taught fitness to, she was my first exposure into like the influencer teachergram world. She had one, and she encouraged me to start up my own as well as start selling some of my digital resources online. And this made sense to me because I was a French kindergarten teacher and I was really struggling to find any sort of ready-made materials that I could use in my class that aligned with my teaching philosophy and the kinds of lessons that I was doing. They weren't there. So I decided that I would start selling them. There's a platform called Teachers Pay Teachers. It's really similar to Etsy. You upload digital products, teachers come on, they can purchase them. They're usually like $3 each. So over the years, I started posting more and more products. I remember the first product I made that actually felt like the real deal, even though I'd already had probably 100 products at this point. But this one I was so proud of. I'd worked so hard on it. It was beautiful. I had worked really hard on all of the marketing for it, all this stuff. And before I knew it, I had 300 products in my store. I'd been selling consistently. I was becoming a household name. My Instagram grew to 14,000. I hit six figures selling like $3 products, and I started to expand my product suite. I wanted to sell off of the marketplace, so I created a membership for teachers, and then I switched the theme of that membership. I had 3 different memberships at different points in this part of my business called A Playful Purpose. And then I decided I was going to start offering some professional development, which was really aligned because when I was teaching in the classroom, I was on the committee for our union to run a huge PD day for the board. And I had all of these plans to run this incredible professional development day for the kindergarten teachers in my board. But of course, this was right before the pandemic happened. And then the pandemic hit and all of our PD was canceled. This huge event I'd been planning for the better part of a year was shut down because we were no longer able to gather in person. But this idea was sitting with me. So I decided I was going to run it in my own way, virtually, and keep all of those ideas, all of that spirit, and get it out as part of my business. Meanwhile, I am still teaching in the classroom at this point, but I really, really started to burn out. And looking back, I can definitely see that this is partially because I am an introvert. As much as I am outgoing and confident and loud and 6 feet tall and love pink and whatever, I am definitely an introverted person, and I know this because I love being by myself. I get really, really tired from social settings, and I think that being a teacher and being in the front of the room and working in a team was actually really, really draining for me in and of itself, even without the dysregulation that is prevalent in every single classroom right now and the struggles that come with working in a team and working under different administrations and all of this. So that was definitely a big piece of it. I was also dealing with unmedicated anxiety, social anxiety, and these deeply rooted fears that I was never going to fall in love, that I was only ever going to be, stuck in this bubble. All my friends seemed to have partners and all this stuff, and I just felt really behind in life in that way. And I definitely identify as a people pleaser, but also I am pretty controlling. I have strong ideas, and I acknowledge that that can be hard to work with. So it's really hard to be both of those things where you want everyone to like you and you want to do really well in your team, but you also have a really hard time letting go and letting people thrive. All of this together really meant that I was a recipe for disaster as a teacher, and I was definitely starting to burn out. I was crying every single day on the way to work. Teaching really wasn't what it was supposed to be. There's so much going on in teaching. There are so many behaviors, there are so many problems in the systems that it's really, really hard to actually teach. And I was working on my business whenever I could. I loved working on my business during lunchtime, during my prep, on the weekends when I would get home from work at 5 a.m. before work. I was forcing myself to be young and fun. I had a whole series on my Instagram about being young and fun and posting that I was actually going out and not working because I had this worry that I mentioned before. I was so worried I was never going to meet someone. I was never going to get married. I was never going to have kids. And I always had these fears of like, why don't I do more things? Why don't I have more friends? But I just wanted more than anything to be at home watching Dragon's Den and working on my business. Throughout this time, when I was getting more and more burnt out and feeling like I was never going to fall in love or do anything, I wanted a change of pace. I felt like was I was done with the Ottawa scene. I was like, I'm not meeting anyone here. I don't want to go out to the bars. My friends are not introducing me to anyone. I need a fresh place where I'm forced out of my comfort zone and I can hopefully change the trajectory of my life, because right now with where it's going, I don't love it. I cannot be burning out and teaching for the next 30 years totally alone. It was not the vibe. So I had this plan to spend the summer in Nova Scotia, which is a couple provinces away from me. It's about a 16-hour drive. And I was like, okay, I'm going to fake move there to see if I actually like it and to see if I want to move there. And I can spend the summer working on my business. At the time, I had a mentor who lived in Nova Scotia. It was going to be this big adventure, and I was really, really excited about it. So I put on my bulletin board one of my goals, fake move to Nova Scotia. Fast forward a couple weeks, it's Christmas, and my family had come over for the morning, and then we all went our separate ways. My brother's married at the time. My parents went back to their house. I was sitting alone in my house. It's like 5 p.m. on Christmas, and I was like, well, now what? Like, this is kind of depressing. So what do? I spark up Bumble. Head on to Bumble, start swiping, and then it says you have no matches left. Awesome. Like, way to kick a girl when she's down. I already am like feeling pretty bad that I'm on dating apps in the first place, and now you told me there's no matches, and it prompts me if I want to expand my criteria. So I say, sure. I don't really look at what that means. I just know on Bumble I had set a bunch of settings about like height and education and location and blah, blah, blah. So it said, do you want to expand your criteria a little? And I said, sure. First person that shows up is my now husband, Dave. And I saw him and I was like, okay, I couldn't figure out why my previous criteria had excluded him. I don't know. I had a few ideas, but nothing I actually cared about. We matched. We talked very little. It was just kind of like, hey, how are you? Cool. Do you want to go out? Sure. Does tomorrow work? Sure. And then we didn't talk the whole next day until about an hour before the date when he was like, are we doing this? Like, what's going on? So we went out for a date. I, at this point, had had a hour and a half rule where I only stayed on dates for hour and a half because as a people pleaser, I was spending way too much time on dates that I was not interested in because I can have a conversation. I can talk to anyone. I want people to like me. So I was sitting on these dates with men that I was not interested in for hours and hours and hours, like 4 to 6 hour long dates, and then getting home and being super exhausted, knowing that I wasn't going to see this person again or interested in seeing them again, and just feeling like I had wasted their time, I'd wasted my time, and I was just so depleted and emotionally drained. So I set into place, I had a 1.5 hour first date rule. I would leave after an hour and a half, and that way I would get home and I would still have time to decompress. I would still have an evening ahead of me. So at this point, none of them had gone well. It wasn't like a waste of my time. It wasn't like a waste of an evening. That's what I told myself. So I'm on this date. It's going super well. All of a sudden, I look down at my watch and it's been 2 hours. And I said, oh no. And he said, what's going on? Like, are you okay? But I had an Apple Watch. He's like, did you get a notification? And I was like, no, I just broke my rule. Like, I only go on dates for an hour and a half. And it's been 2 hours. And he was like, oh, okay. Are you going to leave? It's like, I guess not, because I was having a really good time. So it was a really good date. It was super casual. There was a huge snowstorm. So there had been all sorts of reasons why we could have canceled, but we went anyway. Huge snowstorm. We end the date, we go outside. It's that super awkward, like, should we kiss, should we not? We don't. He goes in his car, I go in mine. I have my friend's voice in my head saying, sometimes you got to make the first move. So I went out to his car and I said, I think you should kiss me. And he did. And whatever. All this to say, it was a great first date. The what's that expression? The problem here, the icing on the cake, but like whatever the negative of that is that he didn't live in Ottawa. I lived in Ottawa. His parents lived in Ottawa. He was there visiting for Christmas. He's from Ottawa, but he was there for the Christmas holidays. And so I knew going into this that he actually was temporarily in the Toronto area, which is about 5 hours away, but that he was moving to Halifax. But when I saw that on his profile, I was like, oh, that's funny because I was already planning on fake moving to Halifax this summer. So maybe it's meant to be. We'll see. So I knew that that was happening, and we immediately knew we were not going to be together. But he was still there for another week, so I saw him a few more times. And then he went away to go visit some friends, and we were still talking on the phone all the time. And we just got to know each other really, really well through FaceTime, through virtual. And this is all before the pandemic happened, when that kind of became the norm. All this to say, fast forward a few months, obviously pandemic happens. So I'm burning out at work. I have just met this guy that I'm dating long distance. I do not want to continue my job and I'm loving my business. And in the back of my head, I think I want to move to Nova Scotia. So basically, I decided I was going to take a leave of absence from work, and my parents were pissed. Not only was I taking like this huge risk of quitting, even though I wasn't quitting, I took a 1 year leave from my permanent salary job. I was moving 16 hours away for a guy that they had never even met. They'd never met him. I barely knew him. And it was just this huge drama of like, you're taking my grandchildren away from me, even though I was not pregnant or close to pregnant or anything like that. And I was never going to come back. And it was this huge thing. They were just so scared and upset for me. But I had decided, I had listed my house for sale, and I was moving to Nova Scotia because we weren't able to visit anymore. With all of the closures and the borders, there was no flying allowed back and forth. Nova Scotia had a rule that no one was allowed to come in and visit, and when you did, you had to isolate for 2 weeks. So there was no way that we could even see each other at all. So really the only option was never see each other, or I was going to move there. He's military, so he doesn't have the option of choosing where he's going to live. It was all on me. So I moved. I moved to Nova Scotia. I bought a house that I had never set foot in. He went and did all the house touring for me. I decided that I was going to move there. I bought this house. I did the drive, and we moved in together. That was not the plan. The plan was I was going to buy this house and he was going to keep living in his apartment. And then he ended up co-signing on the house with me, and we then both owned the house, so we both lived there. And mind you, this is June and we met in December, and now it is June and we own a house together. Our relationship has always moved at this kind of pace. We were engaged in October, and on that same day that we got engaged, I found out I was pregnant. It was like an oopsie pregnancy, but I mean, we weren't upset about it. I've always wanted to be a mom. He's always wanted to be a dad. We knew we were going to get married, and it was just kind of like, this is par for the course for us. Like, we just go through everything so fast that it just was very on brand, as much as he does not like that expression. At this time, I was working as a teacher in Nova Scotia. I was working for the French board, and I was continuing to work on my business behind the scenes, any chance that I could, during my preps, during lunch, before work, all of this. And I had scaled it to almost 6 figures. So when I went off on maternity leave, I actually only got 3 months of paid maternity leave because my passive income was growing so much that I no longer qualified to collect maternity leave, to collect EI. And that was totally fine with me because I loved my business. I loved the flexibility to work on it. And I didn't mind at all working on my business with a little newborn sleeping on me. So I continued working from home and then never looked back. I never wanted to go back to work and leave my baby. And I scaled my business even more. And then I got pregnant again with the twins, which is a story for another day, but no, twins do not run in my family. And shortly after the twins were born, we got posted back to the Ottawa area so that we could be close to our family. So we moved back across the country. And once I got here, I decided to pursue one of my biggest business dreams at the time, which was to have a brand photo shoot. So I met Alana and we went on a super cute little Airbnb in Elmont, and I spent the weekend there, and I got a bunch of photos taken for my business, and I felt like a real grown-up business lady. And she asked me during the photo shoot if I would coach her because she was so impressed by everything that was going on in my business and was asking me all of these questions about her and her business. And I laughed it off. I fully laughed it off. I was like, I'm not a business coach. Like, I make teacher resources. This has nothing to do with business coaching. But lo and behold, a few months later, I started business coaching. I had this seed planted in my head from her, and I realized I love teaching. I love helping people. I love talking to other entrepreneurs and helping them grow their business and share everything that I've learned. And at the same time, I've been burned by many coaching programs before where it just wasn't the way that I learn. It wasn't concrete enough. I wasn't able to actually take anything tangible from those programs, implement it into my business, and see results. And I wanted to do something different. So a few months later, I started my brand new account. I started coaching, and I was ready to just completely shut down my previous business and go all in on coaching. But Dave, voice of reason, was like, listen, your business is really important to our family income. We need your salary. We use my salary to even buy the house that we're currently in. We need to keep this paycheck coming in. It is not reasonable for you to just completely shut down this established business to start business coaching when we have no proof of concept. So I was obviously like super offended, but I knew he was right. So over the course of the next year, I ran both businesses. That looked like me bringing in a VA and slowly doing less and less and less in my original business while I scaled my new coaching business where I just felt totally aligned, so excited to show up, so excited to help people, and really, really motivated to help as many women entrepreneurs as possible so that they didn't have to make all of the same mistakes and have all of the same growth and messy and blah, blah, that I had. Because I was like, you don't need to do that. I've already done it. Here, this is exactly what you need to do. It's been now almost a year since I started business coaching, and throughout that time, I've experimented with all different kinds of offer suites and all different kinds of programs and coaching methods until I've landed on the things that feel really, really good for me. And that's something that I think needs to be talked about a lot more in entrepreneurship, is that you need to work through this messy middle where you don't really know what it is exactly you want to be doing. But instead of just sitting there and thinking about it and not doing anything because you're not sure it's the one, you're just going to go for it. You're going to go for it and try. And if it doesn't work, that's cool. You can switch it out and do something else. But allow yourself that space and that permission to play around with things in your business until you do find what clicks, because you're not going to find it unless you try. And over this time, I found a coach that I love and who fits my needs. I've learned to love selling and completely change my perspective on sales and marketing. And within 11 months, I had already scaled this component of my business, this coaching business, beyond 6 figures. And this was just so amazing to me. I had less than 3,000 followers on Instagram. My email list was like 700. And this was already creating so much impact that I am so motivated to keep growing it and to keep sharing what I know and to keep helping more people. And the power of the pivot is the whole theme of my life. When I feel something is right and I'm excited about it and I'm passionate about it, that is exactly where I go, and that is where I see success. Whether that is me deciding to boldly leave the classroom, even though, teachers don't leave the classroom. Once you get a permanent job, that is it. You simply do not leave. Whether it was that or moving across the country for a guy I barely knew, or getting married less than a year after knowing someone, having 3 kids under 2, whatever it is, when I decide something and when I know it is right for me, I am all in. And I am all in on the pivots that make you feel excited and that make you feel aligned to your business. Those big moves that feel so scary and risky, when they are well thought out and when you are excited about them, those big moves are going to be the ones that change your life. So pretty much that catches you up on my entrepreneurial journey. You will learn so much more about me and my history and my experience as we go through this together, this journey together, this podcast together. And I am excited to get to know you as well. If you already know that you want to jump in and work with me because you are a leaps of faith driver buyer just like me, then you can go to mariahscrivens.com/services and see what I offer, see what jumps out to you as the right way to get to know each other. If you want to just connect and chat more, I am on Threads and Instagram at Mariah Makes It Happen. And I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear about your story, about your own leaps of faith, about things holding you back from leaps of faith, whatever it is. Go ahead, send me a message. I would love to hear from you and figure out your next big move.